You may have heard us talking the other day about the first day at school. Geraldine O'Brien was here in studio with me with some tips for first-time parents getting through what can sometimes be a very emotional time. Well, as you can imagine, there was a lot of response, and one of the things that got mentioned more than once was a piece by John D Sheridan called I Know How You Feel. John D Sheridan was a much-loved writer. In fact, I think it'd be fair to call him an essayist, which is something of a forgotten breed in itself. And one of his biggest fans was our own Gay Byrne. And Gay actually made an album of Sheridan's writings called The Humours of John D Sheridan, on which Gabo reads, I Know How You Feel. Well, on foot of our first day at school piece, one of our listeners, Eamon MacDonald, actually sent us in a cassette, and I have it here. Cassettes, remember them? Anyway, I'm going to play it for you now. It's extraordinary in that it is so ordinary, but it's actually the ordinariness of an Ireland that doesn't exist anymore, when things went at a much slower pace, way before the Celtic Tiger, way before kids were collected by, I suppose, the au pair in the SUV, when your mum was still mammy, and when she had the dinner cooking on the range, when the school was staffed by the master and the mistress. Well, you can hear it for yourself. Here's Gay Byrne reading John D Sheridan's thoughts on the first day at school, I Know How You Feel.
If this was his first day at school, ma'am, I know how you feel. He was getting to be a bit of a nuisance in the house this last while, catching his finger in the wringer, turning on the gas jets, chasing the cat, running blindly across the road. And after every fresh bit of devilment, you told yourself as a promise, and him as a threat, that you'd pack him off to school after the holidays. And you did. You dressed him up in his new jersey and pants, and you spent most of the morning grooming him. You almost washed his ears away, and you put a shine on his cheeks. You wet his curls and combed them into glory. You hugged him because he looked so lovely, and you cursed all schools because he looked so young. But you brought him, nevertheless, and you changed your child into a unit of attendance. You told them his name and his age. You wanted to tell them a lot of other things, that he's only an infant, really, that some of his discarded wrappings are still in use as dusters, that he responds to praise and affection, that you can get him to do anything you want if you take him the right way. But you didn't tell them any of these things. You were very brave and very reticent and utterly miserable. If you were a foolish woman, you would have offered to let your house go to pot and stay with him all day as an unpaid, untrained supernumerary, a highly privileged assistant. But you're a sensible woman, so you turned on your heel and walked away. Not too sensible, however, for you took one look back as you walked up the corridor, and you saw that he was looking back too, with a little lost look, as he went into the classroom to join his regiment. Something happened to your heart then. You told the woman next door over the railings that you didn't know whether you were laughing or crying. But you knew well enough, and she knew. You were crying, and you had good reason. For the thing that happened to your heart when you left him will never be put wholly right. You went in after that and made yourself a nice cup of tea. And when that failed, you tried a wild orgy of housework. But it was no good. It was a long, long morning, and the house was empty without him. You missed the shouts of him and the frightening silence that made you drop everything and ask yourself, I wonder what he's up to now. You remember the days when, after a bump and a scream, he would come to you for comforting, and with alternate scolding and cuddling, you would ease his hurt and your own. You had a baby in the cradle and a dinner on the range, but they didn't seem to take up as much of your time as usual. A weaker woman might have stood at the window at midday to watch for his coming. But you contented yourself with settling the front room curtains 5 or 6 times, and it was quite by accident that you saw him turn the corner. You wanted to rush down the road to meet him, so you went into the kitchen and stirred all the pots, just to show your self-control. But you didn't deceive even yourself, for your hand was shaking, and it wasn't the steam that made you dry your eyes. There wasn't the slightest hurry on him as he walked up the path, the little rascal, and when he came in, he fought free of your caresses. You wanted to know how he got on at school and what the mistress had said to him. You wanted to know if she'd noticed his nice new jersey and the near gold of his hair. You wanted to know if she'd given thanks publicly for the bonniest new scholar that ever sat in a desk. All he wanted was his dinner. He might have been years at school for all the excitement he showed, and the little he had to tell had to be dragged out of him. The mistress had drawn a cat on the board, and the master had a green bicycle. You asked him again and again what the mistress had said to him, and at last, with his mouth full of bread pudding, he remembered. What she'd said was, "Sit down there on that desk beside Johnny Sullivan." That's all. Before he had finished his second helping of pudding, there was a rattle at the letterbox, and he rushed out at once to join his comrades in arms. You dragged him back to rub his face and hands, and you terraced his curls with a wet comb. But all the time he was fighting to be gone, and when he walked out the gate with the others, he didn't as much as look back. You knew then that he was reared and done for, and when you went back into the kitchen again, the baby in the chair was no comfort to you. So you made yourself a nice cup of tea, and you told yourself not to be silly. After all, it was only for a few short hours. When he came back again in the evening, he would be your very own, and you would have him all to yourself. It was then that you cried in real earnest, for you knew in your heart and soul that you would never have him again. Not in the old way. He was reared and done for. You thought when you got him first that you would have him forever, but all you had was a loan of him. He will still come to you in his troubles, for he is tethered to your heart, but he will come less frequently as the tether lengthens, until some day it breaks and there is nothing left but the stake. You will still have him morning and evening, and on Sundays and holidays, but though he will return as surely as a homing pigeon, you will know that he is merely home on leave. From now on, the world will be his barrack square, and there is nothing you can do about it. And, ma'am, I know how you feel.
Different times. Gay Byrne reading John D Sheridan's I Know How You